lot of questions in class about how to find our proper jerk stance. What I want to say is that a jerk, a split jerk, is different than a lunge, and I will point out in the video some of those differences, but first I want to show one of many simple ways to draw lines on the ground that can help you start to understand where your feet go. So this is just a starting point. This isn't perfect for everyone, but it's simple and it's fast. All right. So Bronson's going to take the chalk. What I want Bronson to do is draw a line across his toes. So then we're going to draw 3 lines total. So now what Bronson's going to do is, which foot would you like to step forward with on your jerk? Right foot. Okay. So I want you to take your right foot, step forward, and kneel on the ground. Okay. And then I want you to look down at your knee and get your hip forwards a little bit. Yep. I want you to draw a line in front of your knee. So that's our second line. And then he's going to eyeball his front foot coming out enough that it looks to him like his shin is perpendicular to the ground. Then he's going to draw a line at his heel.
That means straight up and down.
Right, exactly. All right, so now go ahead and stand up. We have 3 lines on the ground. So what I want Bronson to do is draw all 3 lines so that they're very easy to see on the ground for us and the viewers. Okay, so now we have 3 lines. I'll take the chalk back for now. So what I want Bronson to do is put his toes on that middle line now. And then he's going to step. He's not going to jump or anything. He's just going to step his front foot forward on his heel on that front line, and then his back toe on the back line. And then visually what we're looking for is we want to see this shin here is either perpendicular, so straight up and down, or slightly, ideally, slightly behind that. And then we also want to see the hip and the knee reasonably close to each other up and down too, okay? So these lines look pretty good. Now, one of the tests if you have a partner is if I push down on his shoulders, he should feel like he can fight me with both legs. So I'm pushing hard down, and he felt very, very solid. Now, we've now figured out where his feet generally will go, but we want to make sure we're stable left to right. So one of the value of a split in jerking is to have stability front to back and left to right. So a power jerk where your feet are square, you only have stability left to right. There is no forward back stability. So if we're thinking about a balance beam, if people are on a narrow balance beam when they're split jerking, they're going to feel very unstable left to right. So why don't we just widen the balance beam? Right, so Bronson has, right now he's on a very narrow balance beam, right? His feet are almost in line with each other, which is a big no-no. So what he needs to do is just widen both feet until he personally feels very stable, right? And now he's got a good idea where his feet go forward back and side to side.
Yeah, I just add to that for what I like to tell people is, in general, this distance left and right is usually about your squat stance.
That's also
right. So if I come here, if I just bring this foot straight up, then it should be about where I squat.
Yeah, I like that. I would definitely agree with that. So I mentioned I wanted to point out some things about lunges and jerk, split jerk differences. So one is, we've already established a lunge can be more narrow, but the split must be wide. If you want to lift some real weight overhead, you have to have a wide split. That's the only way you can be stable left or right. The other thing is we want anatomy to help. So we want to turn the joint at the hip inward some. So we actually trying to encourage slight internal hip rotation, which is the same for most people as toeing in slightly on both legs. So a visual way to sort of make sense of this is if I drew a line here in his toe and I drew another line here in his back toe, eventually, if I draw these lines out far enough, they would intersect, right? And so that's proving that he's turned his hips internally slightly. Why do weightlifters do that? is because it adds a bone-on-bone stability. It takes the thigh bone, the femur, turns it up against the acetabulum of the hip bone, and makes bone support bone, so it's not just muscle supporting bone, right? Whereas a lunge would be way less weight, and so we can have our toes more straight ahead in our lunge because we're not handling anything overhead, at least not with any significant weight.
But if you want to do lunges with your toes in like that, then do that, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Right?
For sure.
Transferability gets you used to doing that, and then when you do this, you're already there, and you kind of have that built in.
Yeah, it's funny. When I went into the sport of weightlifting, practicing weightlifting over and over and over and over again, I didn't intend to, but I started unconsciously lunging with my feet turned in.
I do it the same way. All the time.
I just keep it now. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't bother anything.
It's like hook grip. I hook grip every day.
All right, so that's some differences between your lunge and your jerk. It also gives you guys an idea of how to find your ideal stance as your trial and error that in and outside of classes.
Talk about the back knee real quick. How bent should it be?
Not a lot.
Straight leg, all the way, not like this, right? We're not trying to touch the ground, right?
No. The back knee is bent, but you have to feel strong. You know, it's like
Squeezing here.
like all of this muscle here should be like 50% of supporting the weight overhead, right? So in lunges, people tend to put most of their weight on their front leg, but in a split jerk, it should be 50 on back, 50 on front, which is definitely harder to learn over time. It takes a good bit of practice. So if you bend this knee too much, you are sacrificing stability. Right now, you're not going to be able to. Right, this is going to get tired. I mean, there's no way he can hold much weight there with that being that low. But here's the other problem: if he straightens his knee, what tends to happen is, in most people, the hip starts to rotate ever so slightly. So if he locks this leg, especially if he made the mistake of putting his heel down, that's even way worse. Right now, all it does, it ends up turning the pelvis, which then makes the whole system overhead more unstable.
What you're trying to do is bring everything in.
Right, so like everything, and trying to figure out that back knee, it's like there's a sweet spot between, you know, too locked makes it so I can't keep my hips square with the weight, and then too bent makes it feel like I'm just gonna fall to the ground because I can't support the heavy weight